Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gained, our weekly podcast unpacking fintech trends, the business of our ventures, existing and new ones, and any market disruptions that we're seeing. I'm your host, of course, Suri, and I'm joined by two very special guests. One we're welcoming back, Alex, and a new guest, Peter. So this week, we're looking to unpack a bold challenge and a bold response to how we disrupt corporate learning and development, and how do we marry that with AI and leveraging AI, especially in the context of the type of content we're able to provide in today's environment. Now, it's no joke that corporates spend over $50 billion on corporate learning and development on a yearly basis, and that's just on leadership learning, but with limited outcomes and limited success. So with that in mind, organizations are also facing a challenge of a younger generation who's coming into the workforce, as well as developing skills at pace for their leaders and for the wider staff that they have. Now, in response to that, we have something that we've been brewing on called Eduverse, and that's built on a partnership with INSEAD. And the plan for today is to start with a little bit of inspiration as to why we started on this journey, what Eduverse is about, and more importantly, how it differentiates itself from the pack. So, as I mentioned, I'm joined by the CEO of SC Ventures, Alex Manson, and the head of strategy and innovation and leading the charge at Flex areas at INSEAD, Peter Zemsky. Good morning, gentlemen. So let's start with the inspiration. Peter, you want to unpack as to what started this journey? I remember we started with a problem statement, and then I'll pass it over to Alex after that.
So like any good venture, it starts with really a fundamental customer pain point in that 50 billion corporate training market. So remember, I'd spent 10 years as deputy dean of INSEAD, dean of innovation. And so I was really thinking about what's still left to be done. The key issue is that for all of the expertise we have at INSEAD about what people should do and our ability to communicate that to people, there was still a big gap between knowing what you're supposed to do as a leader, as a salesperson, and actually doing it in practice. And that moving from knowing to doing, always hard, key pain point. And the realization, I think, when we were talking with Alex, was, wow, these advances in AI mean that the time is right, the technology is there to tackle this fundamental issue and really complement existing management education and get the kind of impact we need today to help organizations adapt to incredibly turbulent times.
Alex, we constantly talk about skills building. We'd love to get your views on that, but also in the context of Eduverse and what inspired us to get on this journey.
Of course, and so skills building is the key word here, right? So you could say anything we do at SC Ventures is ultimately about skills building. Venture building is skills building. The entrepreneurship program is skills building. The ability to build muscles within you as an individual and in an organization in order to handle technology of the future, serving clients the way they want to be served, using the technology of today, not yesterday. It's skills building. So skills building is at the heart of pretty much everything we do. Take the cliche. That's one aspect. And then a little over 2 years ago, we were on the back of raising some funds for the school, which Peter was very involved with. I attended a lecture, very professional lecture, but different. It was an immersive environment. It was the beginning of the use of AI and an immersive environment combined to deliver content in a completely different way. And that was an eye-opening moment for me, because I said, well, that's different, because we do skills building, but we have to deliver it differently, and we have to do that different at scale, so we can really help people build skills, generally speaking. And so that moment, I think, a little over 2 years ago, is where I say, we got on with it, and obviously the idea evolved and changed 5 times at least, since we started the discussion. But it goes back to skills building, but different.
Absolutely. And I think, from my perspective, when we did start this journey 2 years ago, I was consuming education from the bank in different ways, shapes, and forms. That was typically two-dimensional in nature, and obviously out of personal passion, whether it's because I'm a gamer or generally like sort of immersive environments, education became a direct use case. So I guess that segues nicely into Peter, tell us a little bit about what Eduverse exactly is, what capabilities there are, and how it's going to serve the evolving needs, especially in the both learning and development ecosystem.
Right. So it's going to be all about experiential learning at scale. So these advances in LLMs, generative AI, allow us to do two fundamental things. One is simulate conversations, role-playing at scale with nuance and complexity adapted to your environment. So you can really have a whole set of difficult conversations in people management, in business development, customer service. And at the same time, generative AI is amazingly good at giving feedback. So if you work with the faculty, what is a good wellness conversation? What's a good sustainable finance sales pitch? And the LLM will patiently look at your conversation, give you detailed feedback on what you did well, but where the skills gaps are, where you could do better. And so that's the category that's coming. I think we saw it, and the last couple of years have shown that this is a real thing. Now, how are we going to play and win in that space? Well, we bring a few things to this. One is obviously on the INSEAD side, the academic depth. So we really start with a deep understanding. What are the competencies you need in this function? What does it really take to sell sustainable finance? What does it really take to create psychological safety? Break those competencies down into skills and give people structured, detailed feedback. And at the same time, between INSEAD and Standard Charter, we're really good at knowing the global context. You need to learn in your organizational context, in your cultural context, maybe in your own language, in Bahasa, in Arabic, and we can do that at scale. And then the final piece is the customization, right? Organizations have particular transformational needs. And just like you've rewired banking, you need to rewire so many things. We bring that ability to adapt this experiential learning at scale to the particular strategic issues a company faces.
And I think the cultural context is super important. The business context, the cultural context is super important. One of the myths about AI is, AI would be very good at sort of rational things, but when it comes to empathy, human beings will have an advantage. Well, guess what? AI is really good at empathy. A good AI tool will recognize whether you're ready for learning, how advanced you are, how uncomfortable or anxious you are, and be able to adapt the learning to your own personal experience, which is completely different delivery. Indeed, in Arabic or Bahasa or over time languages, obviously. And taking the cultural and business and situation context into account in the learning experience, which makes it very different.
Absolutely. Actually, Peter and Alex, I think one of the things that we're toying with in the early stages of the incubation of Eduverse was the pedagogies and what type of sort of environment do we want to create to ensure that the learning that we're putting out has the best impact on the learners. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we're focusing on, role-playing, maybe describe some of the use cases, at least one use case in depth, and how that could make an impact from a financial individual all the way to beyond finance as well?
So I'll just sketch a couple. One, say business development. So you've got new products, right? And so you've got a skilled sales force that has the relationships, has the trust, but suddenly it could be the products are changing, or you're moving even from a product to a solution sale. And how do you quickly get them down that learning curve, right? And so that they're not practicing on their customers, or even worse, they're not fully comfortable selling the new sustainable finance solution, so they don't do it. And so it really is that learning curve. Have your first conversations and get the feedback. And again, typically what we find in organizations, they're subject matter experts, there are a few key salespeople who are nailing it. What do they know? What makes for a good conversation? Codify that and use that to spread it across the force. So it really is not how do we use AI to disrupt people and push them aside, but how do we make them better? And here's another one in people management. Suddenly there's a lot of stress out there, and a lot of what we're living through is there's a wellness issue. And so organizations might say, okay, my frontline managers, I want you to start having conversations with your employees around wellness and what are we doing there. On the other hand, how are they going to learn to have a wellness conversation? Do you want them to practice and go down that learning curve on your people? Whereas here, you can suddenly say, hey, Why don't we do the first 5 or 6 conversations in a safe environment on a simulated thing before you roll this out? And I think that's getting a lot of traction. And as you can see, these are general issues that we're solving across organizations, but we're bringing the particular nuance of what are your products? How do you need to approach wellness in your organization? We can do all that.
And you do 2 things, right? One, you mitigated the risk of having the conversation for real and trying with your own people. And the other thing is you mitigated the anxiety of the person having to, not being comfortable getting into a conversation because I've never done this before.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I know how to do this, so I might avoid it or delegate it, which is important. And so the element of both sides can be now practiced. As a banker, I used to rehearse my pitches, really important pitches, and this process that got stuck in a conference room, for some period of time to properly rehearse the important deals. That doesn't happen every day. In fact, that happens very rarely, and people sort of show up and make it up as you go during the conversation, which is a shot in the foot in my mind. Well, you can rehearse in the comfort of your office, in fact, your home, and that avatar is not judgmental. It will give you very good feedback, but isn't going to judge you on your delivery of especially the first delivery of that pitch. And it can be a little unnerving at first glance, but this is really how you improve and get better. So to your business development use case, it's a very obvious one.
Can't name the company, but there's some of these high performance professional service firms where the culture is, as a senior partner, I never make mistakes, which means I'm not willing to go into a room and rehearse in front of my colleagues.
Exactly.
And so this ability to say, in the safety of your office, you can go in and you can have an environment where you're getting asked the tough questions by the simulated CFO, and it's a safe space, even for the senior partner, was a little surprising to me, but seems to be true.
But it's very true, and it's remarkable what impact that has when you're actually going through that process of sort of trying and not doing it quite right or doing it very wrong, in fact, getting feedback and trying again and iterating until it gets better. So it's going to be just a better pitch, better conversation, better knowledge, different. So skills building improves.
Exactly. And actually, I just want to come back to that and back to you, Alex. I think would love to get your grander vision. Naturally, we're starting in corporate learning and development. There's a lot to be done there. But if I look at where the bank is and some of the markets that we operate in, especially in the context of upskilling individuals, communities, and so on and so forth, especially in some of these challenging markets, where do you think over a course of time, Lexarius plays a role in the context of skills development for some of these challenging markets?
I think generically, I think there's I'm passionate about skills building and education. I think this is several percentage points in the GDPs of every market where we operate. It has an immediate impact on people's lives and on societies where we operate, as a general matter. You can think of it as very specifically difficult conversations in a corporate environment. That's our first use case. And that needs scaling, and we will scale this, and we have the technology today to scale it. Over time, I can imagine a number of quote-unquote modules and expand the type of content that we deliver differently at scale. Both things. This is interesting about technology. Both this very bespoke and very much at scale to societies where we operate. How else are we going to impart critical knowledge to a number of SMEs across South Asia and Africa, for example, than using the tools that modern technology has for us? And so I can see this expanding into a much bigger thing.
I must say, finding the partnership with SC Ventures and this sort of nothing ventured, nothing gained theme really resonating. So again, part of it is what you bring in terms of that global reach and the objectives. But the other thing is just the attention you've taken to rewiring the DNA in banking. I'm convinced we're at a similar moment in education, right? So education, management education has traditionally lagged. It's not like a frontier digital transformation topic, I think, until now. AI is an amazing fit with education. Just think about all the times you go to an LLM to learn something. Mm-hmm. So threatens to fundamentally rewire the DNA in our industry. And it's a two-edged sword. So on the one hand, there's huge needs for training and rescaling. But now if we don't embrace these new possibilities, we're going to be left behind. And so really having a partner that's been through the disruption of banking and understanding how that can go, and we can play out some of that same lessons in managed education has just been a real treat for me.
And human nature is such that when something's done to you, you're at the receiving end of it, you're going to be a little more defensive. You're going to think of the downside. You might think of how you slow it down so you can control it better. That's human instincts. Right? When you are embracing the reality, in this case, technology is here. We have fire. We're not going to uninvent fire.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so now we have fire. Embrace it. It can be a little dangerous. We need to learn to deal with this. But more importantly, it does a number of great things. We're going to use it. We're going to adopt it, and we are going to now doing and applying and adopting. I have a completely different mindset versus I'm at the receiving end of it. Yeah. And I think we're suggesting that we use AI in the context of both financial services and education, in this case combined, to adopt and be at the forefront of what it means to essentially improve the knowledge, augment human beings in the context of what they do, and make us better professionals.
Fantastic. So I think we're coming near to the hour of how much time I'm allowed to speak, or we're allowed to speak collectively. Being corrected by that, not me. Peter, I'll just come back to you for one last thing, which is, I guess, a bit of a plug. For the corporate learning and development leaders that are watching this today and in the future, anything you want to tell them to look out for, and anything you want to tell them with regards to how they can come and approach Lexarius and start a conversation and a partnership?
So it's really about what Alex said. Let's be proactive. There are obviously amazing threats and stresses created by AI, but at the same time, if you embrace it, amazing positives you can do. And so that's our commitment, that's our mission. We're looking for like-minded L&D leaders who want to create a more human-centric AI that can make organizations better, make the human interactions more effective, and allow human learning to match some of the speed of machine learning that we have today.
Anything else to add, Alex, before we close this week's episode off?
I also bring it back to the fact that it's every one of our ventures, and this is no exception, is just as good as the partners we encounter, the way we engage, and the creative energy we'll get from people coming up with a use case, coming up with a problem, coming up with a need within a corporate organization, letting us know about it, and co-creating what it is that we need to do in order to solve the problem or address the need. And so broad invitation to engage, reach out to us, and as we build Lexarius, I think we couldn't be more excited about the possibilities and what we'll do as a small team, but with all the partners and potential partners the same way.
Perfect. So thank you, Peter and Alex. For the audience, if you have any questions, inquiries, you want to reach out, you can reach out to us on scv.partnerships@sc.com. We'll see you on the next week's podcast of Nothing Ventured, Nothing Gained. Thank you.